What is debt default? Debt default occurs when a borrower fails to meet the legal obligations of a loan, usually by not making the required payments on time. In the case of sovereign debt, such as U.S. Treasury bonds, a default could occur if the government is unable to make interest or principal payments when they are due. Here's what typically happens in a debt default scenario. Failure to pay. If a borrower, a person, company, or a country, fails to make scheduled interest or principal payments on a debt obligation, it is in default. Consequences. The exact consequences of a default can vary depending on the nature of the debt and the contract between the debtor and the lender. For sovereign debt, the government issuing the debt may face economic sanctions, legal action, or damage to its reputation in the global financial community. Restructuring. Sometimes, when a country is unable to pay its debt, it may negotiate with its creditors to restructure the debt. This might involve extending the timeline for repayment, reducing the total amount owed, or changing the interest rate terms. Defaulting on debt is generally seen as a last resort, as it can lead to serious economic consequences. In the case of a country defaulting on its sovereign debt, it could lead to a financial crisis, cause interest rates to rise sharply, weaken the country's currency, and potentially lead to inflation or other severe economic disruptions. What is U.S. Department default? A U.S. debt default would occur if the United States government failed to pay the interest or principal on its issued treasury bonds, bills, or other forms of borrowing when they are due. These forms of borrowing are how the U.S. funds its budget deficits and rolls over its existing debt. If the U.S. were to default on its debt, it would be an unprecedented event. As of 2023, the U.S. has never defaulted on its debt. The U.S. is often seen as one of the world's most reliable borrowers, with its debt seen as a safe haven for investors around the globe. U.S. Treasury securities are considered virtually risk-free and are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. A default could occur if the U.S. hits its debt ceiling and Congress fails to raise it in time. The debt ceiling is a cap on the total amount of debt the federal government is authorized to borrow to meet its obligations, including Social Security and Medicare benefits, military salaries, interest on the national debt, and many other items. The prospect of a U.S. debt default is generally regarded as a potentially catastrophic event for the global economy. It could lead to a sharp increase in interest rates, a decline in stock markets, a downgrade of the U.S.'s credit rating, and potential chaos in the global financial system. It could also lead to a delay in payments on the debt itself and on other government obligations.